Good morning, everyone. I am Kyle Constant, Digital Services Librarian at Trails Regional Library, and we are going to be doing another online training this morning. Today we're going to be talking about ChiltonLibrary. Chilton is a fairly simple service, so I think this will be a fairly short training, but it's still very useful, and if nothing else, it keeps you from having to have all of those giant books on your shelves and still provide the same resource. So I'm going to go ahead and share my second screen with you. Let me get the right thing pulled up here. There we go. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with the homepage here, and I will make this a little bit larger so that it's easier to see in just a second. But I do want to start with our menu. So ChiltonLibrary is in our online resources menu. And if you click on that, then you will be presented with the ChiltonLibrary homepage. Again, similar to our previous auto repair service, which was called Auto Repair Reference Center, Chilton is very simple in that starting off, all you have to do is know the year, make, and model of the vehicle that you're trying to repair or find more information about. And that information is right over here. Let me go ahead and enlarge this as I said I was going to. There are some things in Chilton, as I was preparing for this training, that did not display really that well blown up like this, and I'll try to kind of maybe zoom out and then zoom back in a couple of times just so you can see kind of what you will see when you're helping patrons with this, or if a patron is using this without you in some cases, what they'll actually see, because in some cases they'll be able to see more, and some of the navigation is a little bit more obvious if it's not enlarged like this. But anyway, there's obviously some welcome information here and some basic information about how to use the service, but the real meat of what you're wanting to do right here when you first get here is to select the year, make, and model of your vehicle. So all you really need to do is go through and select, as I said, the year, make, and model of the vehicle that you own or that you're repairing or finding more information about for your patron, and search for that vehicle. Now this one, perhaps there's less information about that vehicle than there was the one that I searched for earlier. So I'll search for that one instead, and we will have more to talk about. I'll have more to show you with that one. Okay, there we go. So you can see there's more options here. In the last one, there was only labor estimating and bulletins and recalls. There wasn't repair or maintenance. I would guess maybe that's because it's a different age vehicle. And I'll also show you some more information on here that you'll see. This is almost 10 years older than the first vehicle that I attempted to show you, and so there's actually the opposite problem with this vehicle, as I'll show you in just a moment, that this one's almost too old. There are some things that don't show up. For instance, in the maintenance section, maintenance sort of ends at a certain mileage and isn't as helpful after a certain point, after a certain age. So to get started, again, I wanted to show you, this is sort of more what most people are going to be seeing, but I'm going to keep it enlarged so that it's a little bit easier to see. First and foremost, what most people are going to be coming to Chilton for is repair. So we'll start with that, and you just click on repair. I will point out there's the same navigation along the top as there is in that menu that I just used: maintenance, bulletins and recalls, labor estimating, repair. Those things are available in both places. You can use either. It's really up to you. Again, zooming out, it's going to look a little bit different than it does whenever we're way in. It looks a little tight and a little cramped whenever I'm zoomed in, but it's the same information, and you can still get an idea of what's there. So my recommendation for how to use this is to do a lot of your navigation over here in the left-hand pane. The reason for that is if you click on body, for instance, sometimes it will try to load information over here in the right, and it kind of slows down the process. What I would do is try to hit these pluses, and that will expand that menu. You see within body, there's exterior and interior. And then within interior, if I hit the plus again, there's more options there. This is much easier and much faster to load just these simple topics than it would be all of the information within those topics. So it's much easier to say, okay, this is what I'm after, and then click on it and get your instructions than it would be to click on one of these titles and get wait for more information to load over here. So select door lock motor, and again, things are kind of cramped when you're zoomed in like this, but you can zoom out and see kind of what they would see. You're going to get some diagrams. You're going to get your basic steps and text instructions as well. In a lot of cases, if there are like this, if there are screws that you need to remove in order to get to a panel or something like that, it will show you the location of those screws and clips. Anybody who's done any body work or anything like that, or had to get into a dash or something like that in a vehicle, will tell you that's one of the hardest things, is figuring out, okay, what's still holding this piece on, not knowing where the clips are, not knowing where the screws are. And in some cases, this can also prevent you from damaging things, because so many things do use clips rather than bolts or screws. This can prevent you from, pulling too hard on something, thinking that it's maybe just in a bind, or it's just there because of friction, and breaking a clip or something like that, and then it won't go back in properly. So these are pretty handy. These kinds of diagrams tend to be very useful whenever you're doing these kinds of repairs. As far as the navigation goes, you get your full path to these instructions here. You can see kind of how you got here, even though we have all of this in the left-hand side broken down for us. We still get the path here in case maybe you searched instead of following these markers here. Instead of following this path, maybe you searched and you want to know, okay, so how did I get here? Then you can maybe backtrack and see if the thing that you're looking for is not here. You can maybe go back to, okay, I want locks and lock systems. You can click on that, and it will open up over here on the right, the different options that they have for locks and lock systems. Again, we see those options over here because we did the navigation the way that I showed you, but you don't always get that. I'm going to go back to that diagram and the instructions for replacing the locks to show you over here on the right, there is the option to listen to these instructions. So it will actually read aloud the instructions that are in text. You can also, as you saw there, I just highlighted the text there. You can also highlight something, and it will pop up a button here for you to listen to the text here for accessibility purposes. If you have folks that are maybe not literate, or are having difficulty understanding the text in some way, shape, or form, you can have that done. Or in some cases, since this is remote accessible, it's possible, I find it kind of hard to believe, but it's possible that someone would maybe be listening to this rather than having the instructions with them. In that same vein, they can print these out so that they don't have to necessarily have a computer in their garage or out in their driveway or somewhere, wherever they might be doing these repairs. They can actually click print, and they can get the printed instructions and take them with them, on paper, out to their car or to their driveway or wherever it is that they're doing the repair. One other thing to note is that though there isn't really an option to email these directions to yourself or anything like that. In a lot of browsers, I tend to use Chrome. I think there's the same option in Firefox. I'm not positive, but over here in the print options where you choose a printer, if you select change, there's the option to save as a PDF. So that's one way that if they want a digital copy, not just a printed version, you can save it as a PDF and just maybe select a thumb drive or something like that as your destination. You see I selected save as PDF, and now the button up here that did say print says save. So whenever I select save, then I'm presented with the option of going through my computer to select a location to save it and then saving it. So I would choose, my thumb drive if I have one plugged in, and then they can save the instructions and take them with them. So that's the basics of repair. One thing I didn't show you is search. Depending upon, this can seem like kind of a shortcut to search for exactly what you want, but any of you who have done either online searching or searching in a database will know it often depends upon your ability to predict what the person creating these guides called something. So if you don't use the right terminology, it's commonly not going to come up in a search. So it's often more useful to be general. If you're looking for something with fuses or the electrical system, it's often more useful to search for something very generally like electrical system or switches or fuses or whatever, than it is to search for maybe a longer phrase that is overly specific. So that is the general usage of the repair side of this tool. The other options, again, that you have up here, I'm just going to kind of work my way backward. The next one is maintenance. And maintenance is going to, again, ask you to sort of narrow down the options available for your vehicle so that it knows what maintenance is recommended for your specific submodel or a specific kind. Examples of where this might change would be automatic versus manual transmission, two-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive in pickups, things like that. The maintenance might be, the recommended maintenance might be different depending on the kind of submodel that you have. Fuel types might also be an example of things that would change your maintenance schedule. If you're, for instance, gas to diesel, it might determine how often you need to do certain types of preventative maintenance, or if you need to do certain types of preventative maintenance. There are significant differences in the way automatic and manual transmissions work, four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive, etc. So some things that you have to do with one type of submodel is just not on the schedule at all for the other types. So putting in the submodel CE for this Corolla, it asks again. It wants me to select a transmission type, so I'm going to go with standard, and then it wants me to select operating condition. This is very subjective, but generally speaking, it's going to be normal. Something that what I was mentioning earlier about the limitations of this tool with older vehicles or with brand new vehicles is, again, in maintenance, because a lot of the recommended service covers the initial, say, 60,000 miles or so of your vehicle. So you can put in your mileage and have it show you the services that it recommends. So, for instance, for 5,000 miles, that's just what it defaults at. So for 5,000 miles, now again, I put in 2005, so you're talking about an 11-year-old vehicle at this point, maybe even a 12-year-old vehicle. 5,000 miles, that's going to be very unlikely, but this is what it's recommending from the factory. 5,000 miles, you should inspect and service your brake linings, drums, and pads and discs, replace engine oil and filter, inspect and service your tires. So if you want to, you can click look ahead, and it will show you the next service interval is 10,000 miles, or you can view your full chart. And this is, again, something that I was alluding to earlier. It shows you the name of the service in this, in the first column, it shows you the service name. In the second column, it says type of service, and then the columns thereafter are just mileage intervals, and it's in the thousands. So again, as I was mentioning earlier, this is an 11 or 12-year-old vehicle. It's very likely that it's going to have more than 60,000 miles on it. But in most cases, you can take the pattern of this one is, these things are recommended every 15,000 miles, and just continue that pattern on to see when the next service, when the next recommended interval for ball joints and dust covers is for your vehicle. And then again, things like drive belt inspect and service at 60,000 miles, and then every 15,000 miles thereafter. Again, it just requires you to do a little bit of math and figure out, okay, where am I in, where does my mileage match up with the intervals that it's recommending, and figure those things out, rather than actually being in a nice, neat table like this. But it still gives you those recommended intervals, so you can figure them out from the table without having the exact mileage listed there. Again, you have the option to print. If you want to print the table, you can do that and take it with you. And again, as I showed you earlier, you can also save it as a PDF and take it with you. Bulletins and recalls is the next major section of this tool. You can filter this down to only cover specific systems. So if you think that there's something going on with your vehicle that is in your exhaust, for instance, and you want to know if there's any recalls, you can then, and you can see just by filtering it down to that, there's only 3 recalls or service bulletins. Service bulletins aren't always the same as a recall. So, the coverage as far as whether that service is going to be fully covered by your warranty or by your manufacturer, it's going to vary. Your mileage is going to vary depending upon what type of bulletin it is. In some cases, there'll actually be recalls, and in other cases, it will just be a recommended service, or in some cases, like this one here, is just informational. It's just something to provide information. It's maybe not even something that they would require you to do. So if, let's say that there were more matching this, then I could also narrow this down by a symptom or a trouble code. If you have a computer that you can hook up to your car and see what trouble code it is providing, then you can look up service bulletins based on that trouble code. Once you have found something that you think matches your situation, let's say that it was excessive sulfur odor, again, I can listen to this bulletin, or I can click directly on it, and it's going to open it up as a PDF. And you can see this is something that was issued August 23rd of 2005. So it's quite an old service bulletin, but let's say it matches what my symptoms are, and so, or my vehicle symptoms rather, and then I can take this in to a service provider, either the dealership or whoever I go to for repairs, and can show this to them, and it might help them in some ways to either have the service covered, or to at least have some recommended guidelines or some guidance from the manufacturer about what needs to be done in a certain situation. Things that they know about are known problems for these vehicles. So that is bulletins and recalls. Labor estimating is kind of what it sounds like. Again, you select your year, make, and model. It autofills, but you still have to hit select. And once you do, then it opens up a separate window here. You can either search for an operation, or you can go through your standard operations and it brings up a table. Same warning I would give you with searching for repairs. You're going to have to worry about matching your wording with the wording that the Chilton manual writer chose or the manufacturer chose to describe their issue. So in some cases, it's easier or maybe even faster to choose the standard operations and go through a similar table to what I showed you in the repair section and find some of these same issues. So for instance, again, we were looking at replacing door locks. Let's say that I want to have somebody else do that. I look at the repairs and it looks like, the instructions, and I say, heck with that. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to mess with that. I'm going to have somebody else do it. You can then go into labor estimating, click on door lock replace, and it can tell you within a certain margin of error how long it should take a service provider to replace the door locks on this vehicle. And again, it does give you, even though you chose your year, make, and model, it does give you years over here. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have the right one whenever you're selecting which one of these to use. It also has a difference between regular and severe. In some cases, like for instance, door locks, I'm not sure what the difference would be between regular and severe. Maybe a couple of the screws are stripped or something is going on that's going to cause them to spend more time with it. But the intent of this is to basically give you a general idea of how long these services should take, with the idea that you would then have a better idea of what you might be charged or what you should be charged in going to a mechanic or a dealership and asking them to complete the repair for you. And then again, you should have a better idea whether or not you have been treated fairly. It's a common concern with a lot of folks that take their vehicles to someone else if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know the difference between a good mechanic and a bad one, or the right cost for a repair versus an exorbitant cost. It's a pretty common fear that I'm going to be taken advantage of if I don't know what I'm talking about. So this is sort of the idea behind this labor estimator, is to give you at least a ballpark figure of what this should take, how much time this should take. And then of course the hourly rate is going to vary depending upon the mechanic or the dealership that you go to. So that's labor estimation. The last thing that we have, again, all of the things that I was showing you so far are pertain to a specific vehicle. The other thing that Chilton has started supplying in recent years is this ASE test prep. And ASE, I honestly don't know what it stands for. My brother's a mechanic. I know he's ASE certified, and he has different certifications from ASE for different aspects of vehicles, different years and makes and models and things like that. So I know he's gone through a lot of this, but honestly, I don't know what the agency is that provides it. But it's a very standardized thing, and it's obviously just proving qualification or proving proficiency. It's just a standardized way of certifying that you are an expert mechanic in whatever aspect that you have tested out of. So these are essentially just online quizzes. There's not a lot of depth here. It's just giving you a rough idea of some of the types of questions that you'll be asked on an ASE test. To be honest, I've never taken one. I don't know. I don't know how representative of those tests these preparatory quizzes would be. So it's very. I would recommend this with some apprehension, just because I would be, well out of my element to say, oh yes, this is exactly what they're going to be asking you on the test. I really don't know, but it's certainly better than nothing, and it's certainly a starting point for someone. When you click on these, it opens up a new tab, and you're then given the quiz. I did fill this in earlier, so that you don't have to watch me go through. And these are all just guesses. I didn't actually take this test. But then when you're done, you can then check your work, or you can reset. So if you check your work, you can see obviously several of these are wrong, and they're just random wild guesses. So I don't know. I don't even know what half the questions were. But this is the way that it represents your correct or incorrect answers. And then if you want to take it again, you can just hit reset, and you can take the same test again. Again, it's only 15 questions. I have to assume that this is not representative of an entire ASE test. Maybe each of these sections that are represented here are just one portion of the overall test, and you would take maybe all of these. I honestly don't know, but somebody who is preparing for one of these tests should have a better idea of what they're testing for. And if they have a little bit of that information, then hopefully it will be either obvious to them, or you can easily guide them to, okay, well, you're testing on exhaust, so this would be a good one for you to take. And again, they've all got A1, A2, A3, X1, P2, things like that. They've got these designations that I would assume, if you're taking the test, that those would mean something to you. And if you have a test that you that you have signed up for, or that you have been scheduled for, then my guess is you have more information about this, and you can probably find the right test for yourself. Again, my guess is it's probably not the all-inclusive or the comprehensive preparation that you would need, but it is one more resource for people who are preparing to take these tests. So that is the gist of how you use Chilton. As you can see, hitting the Chilton home, it just goes back to the year, make, and model of the vehicle. So if I was going to select something new, I would just do that here and start the process over. Let me check real quick to make sure that I don't have any questions in the chat. Gotta open the right one. Okay. I don't see any questions in the chat, so seeing none, I'm just going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.